Thank you to our three presenters who have joined this live Q&A session. A special thanks as well to all of our attendees who have logged in to this first Q&A of the day at quite an early time across Asia. As you all know, the focus of today's agenda is to provide updates and insights to our agent partners and counsellors, and most importantly, to officially recognise the incredible support that you have continued to give New Zealand and New Zealand's education sector during such a challenging time for the entire industry. I will start by introducing our speakers, beginning with Jean-Pierre Varuso-Kung, Manager Education Agents at Education New Zealand Manapo ki te ao. Jen presented earlier and shared a comprehensive update on what ENZ is doing to engage our agent partners across the globe. Kia ora, Jen. Next up, we have Ross Crossan, the Student Experience Manager at Education New Zealand Manapo ki te ao. During his presentation, Ross provided an overview of the support that has been provided for international students, focusing on national student experience and wellbeing initiatives. Kia ora, Ross. Last but not least, we have Joy Hotter, Business Development Manager at Education New Zealand Manapo ki te ao, who presented today on New Zealand's regions and what makes them special or unique in comparison to some of New Zealand's larger cities. Kia ora, Joy. It's great to have all three of you with us today. We do have some questions coming through, which I'll now get underway, and we'll aim to cover off as many of these as possible within the next 15 minutes. Jen, this one is for you. How is ENZ planning to support education agents while borders remain closed for the large majority of international students?
Kia ora, everyone. Good question, and thanks for being here today and attending those sessions during the week that we've been planning for a while. So it's a very good question, and I guess what I can answer you is that we've been doing a lot over the last year and this year in the for agents, and what we've been doing is mainly on the three themes. So we've support for mainly our recognized agents around the world through co-funding initiatives. So our offshore teams have been doing a lot of support for their promotional events and initiatives. So that's something that we are looking at continuing to do. We've been doing a lot of engagement and recognition of the role of our agents as well. So those are all themes that we've been doing, but we are also planning to continue to do, especially while borders are closed. And whenever possible, we are starting slowly, and some of our offshore teams have been starting slowly to do some face-to-face events as well, whenever possible. And this is done, and it's different in each country, obviously, depending on the country situation. But we are exploring, obviously, more and more face-to-face initiatives as it is possible to do so. So we'll continue to support our agents as much as we can, but another key thing is to keep them updated and send quality and timely communications with our agents, which we do regularly through webinars and through news feeds and newsletters. So I hope it answered the question.
Kia ora. Yeah, kia ora, Jen. Another question here for you following that one. What key messages do agents need to deliver to students who are waiting for the borders to reopen? And is there any way that ENZ can help agents to retain their students' interest in New Zealand?
Yes, very good question as well. So I think the minister, the New Zealand Minister of Education, has made it clear that despite the uncertainty at the moment, we are very committed to supporting international education and welcoming students when it's possible to do so. So until then, I think that there's a lot of options that are possible for students while waiting for the borders to open, and we have lots of initiatives online, study online. So obviously each providers and each institution has their own programs, but we also offer online studies through Future Learn. We have the New Zealand Global Competency Certificate as well, and we have some face-to-face studies options through our offshore study locations as part of our Pathway initiative. So this is mainly in Asia, so exactly for your clients and your public. So please be in touch with our offshore teams for more information about what's available, but there are study options that are currently available for students until they can physically come to New Zealand and study here with us.
Thank you, Jen. Ross, I'll head over to you. There's a question here asking, during the pandemic in which many school students haven't been able to return home, how has ENZ, New Zealand institutions and the government supported them?
Kia ora, thanks. And kia ora, welcome to everybody who has joined online, given it's an early hour perhaps for you. Really important question. Firstly, I think it's really important that we recognise and acknowledge that this is a very real situation, and that for a student and those supporting the student acknowledging that it is also a really important step, possibly getting as well. So coming forward is really important. A couple of things I think I would say really, three things. One is that for any student, wherever they are, where are their key points of contact in terms of through their school, their education provider, homestay coordinators. So who are those key points of contact and who can provide support? I mean, I'd really like to, I know that schools, providers, homestay families, whatever, have been doing huge amounts and going above and beyond to support students. Throughout the pandemic, we also know that a whole lot of community organisations, multicultural groups and what have you have also been providing key support. So, you know, what exists where the student is to kind of want to provide resources to support. So kind of making those contacts. I think that a really key thing for us at Education New Zealand, what can we do in terms of online resources that can actually support a student wherever they are, and so access those, and they may be resources of ours through Know My NZ, but also those that we link off to, and I'll just give one example, the Asian Family Services. So yes, they're an organisation here in New Zealand, but actually they have and have produced over 12 months some amazing resources that can provide really good support that kind of address some of these key health and well-being issues. So we fully understand that homesickness, that those issues are really challenging. Encourage students, but also to acknowledge and to appreciate that these things are normal, and to kind of understand that that's also really important. Kia ora.
Thanks, Ross. Thank you, Ross. Related to that, you know, New Zealand has built a reputation and is regarded as, you know, safe and welcoming with its pastoral code of care and the Manaakitanga spirit. I'm sure it's been inspiring to actually see those words in action during what's been such a challenging time for students when they have been separated from their loved ones. Are you able to comment on that?
Look, I'd probably just echo that it has been. And I kind of just reiterate what I said, knowing that kind of the efforts that a whole raft of people, organisations, groups, schools, providers have kind of gone to. And it doesn't in any way diminish the real challenges that individual students and groups of students have had to contend with, but it has been really inspiring to see that some of what is it the you know, walking the talk and seeing that some of what is actually aspired to is actually a reality in a whole raft of areas. So yeah, really encouraging. Our challenge always is to understand what was done, what can be done better, how do we carry on those lessons into what we're doing this year and beyond. As I said, I think some of those challenges have become more this year rolls on. So, but yes, absolutely, it has been.
Great, thank you, Ross. Joy, over to you. There's a question here. How has each New Zealand region worked with Education New Zealand to promote their offerings to international partners, and B, to support the international students that are currently in those regions?
Thank you, Ben. So the regions, just trying to explain what regions actually mean in this context. ENZ, as you know, that we are the government agency that supports international education. So we work really closely with regional organizations, for example, economic development agencies or membership bodies that are created by the local providers. So those are the organizations that we call the regional bodies, and they are like ENZ's extension into all corners of New Zealand. So they work very closely with the local government agencies like the council, welcoming communities, also with the providers in the region. So they create this collaborative environment for the local providers so they can all work together to promote the regions to the students, because we believe that when the students come to New Zealand to study, they spend obviously a lot of time on campus, but also they spend up to 3-4 years living in the city, and that becomes their home. So their experience in the region, in their home community, is very, very important to them. So these organizations are there to provide that outside of classroom experience to students, and they work, in terms of promoting the region. They also work very closely with the agents, with our offshore team here at Education New Zealand, and to basically provide that collaborative resource to promote all the providers in the regions, and also add in there is that unique experience that you can get from each of the region.
Great, thank you, Joy. Another question, I'll come back to you, Ross, with this one. While New Zealand focuses a lot on international students that are still in New Zealand, are there any plans or strategies in place to look after the international students who were offshore at the time that the pandemic started?
Sure, yeah, that's very, very critical. And I would say at the outset, Education New Zealand, education providers and others are extremely mindful of that situation and that challenge. And that has been a very real focus. Talking with providers, as I and others have over the last year, we know that there's been a really intense effort put into understanding what those needs are and trying to put in place programs like buddy programs, peer-to-peer programs, phone chat, Zoom call, regularly sort of scheduled activity that really has the focus of connecting with those students and supporting those. Challenge Education New Zealand, and in our current international student experience survey, that's very much one area that we will be looking to better understand given where we are in 2021, and also a challenge for us. We're always looking at how we improve what and how we utilize Know My NZ, and so that's a real challenge in terms of, for those students, what content currently exists, what's missing, what can we actually repurpose so that we can actually better serve those students. So always a challenge. There is a lot being done, and of course, but then there is all the awareness for those students of what is being done and their awareness of that as well. So it's complex, but extremely important and a real focus for so many of us in the sector. Yes, I appreciate it. Time is ticking. Oh.
No, thanks, Ross. There is one question, Joy. It's asking, how does Education New Zealand support each region to create a link between local industry and education providers? You've got about 40 seconds to try and answer that.
Sure. And I think the benefit of working with regional colleagues that are sitting in the local economic development agencies, that they do have a lot of connections into the wider industry. So a good example from what you heard from the presentation earlier on is like an employer connect program that Wellington NZ has provided to our local international students, is using their connection into the industry, connecting employers with our international students to help the international students to understand what is this like to work in New Zealand, but also for the employers to get an understanding of what it's like to employ international students. Is really bridging that gap of, let's not be afraid, to trying to get employment experience in New Zealand, but also let's not be afraid as an employer to recruit an international student. So those are some of those programs that our regional colleagues are offering, and we are supporting them to offer to our international students in the regions that will hopefully help to make a difference.
Great, thanks, Joy. It's some very important work. So a good note to end that session on. Again, thanks to all of our presenters, and thank you to the attendees for logging in. Ngā mihi nui.